Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden. I almost said Golden Opportunities Coaching, but that's my other channel. This channel is Pro Wrestling Logic, where we discuss the history of pro wrestling in audio review format. Most of the time, we do have interviews as well, and we'd love to do more of those. Look forward to doing more of those. But if you like what you hear here, and several thousand of you seem to, please feel free to subscribe. We'd like more subscribers. On that march to 100 subscribers, it'd be awesome if you were that person. Like, subscribe, comment below. We are doing Saturday Night's main event after TNT, but you determine what we do after that. In any event, this is the September 22nd, or 27th, I'm sorry, edition of the TNT program. And let's see, there's some good stuff here, some debuts and the like. It's actually quite interesting because there are debuts in almost every segment um, on on TNT for quite a bit of time, and we will talk about that almost at least a couple times a month. There's a debut of a talent that most of us who grew up as 80s and early 90s fans know as a main character, and this is all happening in the 85 to 87 time frame. So anyway, good time to be a fan, certainly, if you like the interspersion of various talents. Hillbilly Jim talks about wanting to be manager of the year, talks about having injuries and the injury at the hands of Brutus Beefcake, and now having had knee surgery and getting laid out by John Studd and challenges there. Um, he talks about wanting to be manager of the year, but also wishes Captain Lou Albano good luck, and it seems that the manager of the year award a big deal. Um, and then we move forward to the uh, the debut of King Tonga, otherwise later known as King Haku, from the Tongan Islands. Obviously, he is, and I don't know the complete lineage, but tied into the giant Samoan wrestling family, the Anawais, that are connected to The Rock somehow. I believe he's The Rock's uncle or second uncle or something like that. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure on the family tree. Heck, I don't think sometimes the Samoans are sure on their family tree, but anyway. Uh, King Haku has the distinction of being the one of the two gentlemen that I saw in the first live match that I ever witnessed. The other being Tito Santana in March of 1989. So, cool little story there. Haku has always had a major spot for me in my mind, and actually, and this will sound you'll know I was a big fan as a kid because back then it was a big deal. Now it's not a big deal. People go to autograph signings and they do all sorts of meet and greets and online calls or whatever with a wrestler. But back when I was a kid, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, to get a high five from a wrestler or to be able to touch one was a big deal. Well, a few months later, after that first event in March, Haku was at the Warwick Musical Theater, which is a smaller venue of held maybe 2,500, 3,000 people in Rhode Island, where I grew up and such. And Haku wandered by, went up our aisleway on the way back to the dressing room, and he passed by my aisle seat. Now, I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, had never been this close to someone that big, and he looked meaner than an angry hornet's nest. I decided against touching his shoulder, even though I easily could have reached out to touch it because, quite honestly, my 8-year-old self was scared of King Haku at that time in my life, and I'm not afraid to say that. Actually, comment below if you have memories of being scared of certain wrestlers as a kid. As we go through the journey here, I will certainly impart upon you other wrestlers that I was scared of. But Haku, the first one that I was close enough to touch, but chose not to because I figured he could have shot my head off or chopped my hand off or something. Anyway, we go to a match with he and Gino Carabello. Carabello, a relatively regular enhancement talent during this time period. He doesn't get a whole ton of offense, although he does get a few shots in. A back suplex and savate kicks and chops by Haku is all, or King Tonga is all that he needs. Interesting to me that he spends the majority of his career in the WWF as a heel, but to come in 86 through late 87, early 88 as a babyface, or 85 through 87 as a babyface, just it kind of caught me off guard. I knew this because we used to have the big event, which we will review here when we do the Coliseum video section. But the big event was big at the, no pun intended, at the video stores where in my town there were about 4 or 5 of them, and every one it seemed had the big event with Hogan and Orndorff on top of that card in Toronto, and that was probably the first time I'd seen Haku was on the big event tape, and he was a babyface there. It just strikes me as odd looking back at his career that they put him in that role. But I think by this point Snuka is gone, so maybe they were trying to capture the island magic with Haku that Snuka had years before. I don't know. Anyway, interestingly enough, he never really speaks totally clear English, but he is stumbling through English huge here. So either he hadn't learned the language completely or he's playing it up. I don't know which, maybe a combination of both. I don't really know. But anyway, this is 1985, and I think he came over in 75. So he should have a handle on the language in a decade. But anyway, he ends up making a pretty big deal out of all that and going in the direction of being willing to team with people, just wanting opportunity, wanting to be the champion. You know, basic wrestling related jargon, and he I don't think is as big a deal then as he would become, but certainly Vince giving him the time of day helped him get over and become a perennial figure for the next several years in the WWF, and a former tag team champion, king, and all sorts of other fun things. Anyway, so we move on to the more campier part of the program. Before we go to see Fuji General, we see Don Muraco talking about how McMahon set him and Fuji up for failure, gave them bad acting, gave them bad director, gave them bad lighting, gave them bad everything. This was intended to be, I don't really know. I think this was intended to be slapstick comedy for all the wrong reasons, and you were supposed to hate them more walking away. I don't think there's any way with this scripting that there wasn't heel intentions. But with McMahon being so much the wrestlers or entertainers mindset, you would think that he would have had a much more pervasive, let's make their acting, even if it's a segment on our own program, look good. That is not the case. Premise of Fuji General is pretty simple. Fuji General is a hospital setting. Don Muraco and Mr. Fuji play doctors. It appears that Fuji is a doctor that is over the top of Muraco in rank because he's giving him orders. Muraco, we find out relatively quickly because the segment's only 2 to 5 minutes, is having an affair with one of the nurses. There is a patient who... Remember I talked about it being campy and stupid? There is a patient who they are checking on in the scene, and he pulls the ventilator tube out of his own mouth to tell the world that he is okay. Muraco then stands in the room with said patient while explaining that he did love her with the enthusiasm of a wet grain of rice, and that even though he was going back to his wife, she should understand and want to be with him anyway. This is horrible acting. The director, quote, quote, cuts him off several times, tells him to stop acting like a wrestler and show some emotion, start being an actor, etc., etc. I don't know where this is going other than to fill time. I mean, I get why people like this because it falls in the it's so bad it's good category, but still, man, it's ugly. If you've never seen the Morocco Fuji acting bits before, they're definitely worth going out of your way to see because when you see a random skit on Raw or SmackDown or NXT, these are the type of things that Vince harkens back to. He likes the campy, we're creating movies mentality, and nothing is finer than that here. Um, we go back, Lord Alfred Hayes and Vince McMahon have quite a few guffaws and laughs at the expense of Fuji and Morocco. They are not impressed with the acting ability. And then we go to Bobby the Brain Heenan, who says that he has signed a deal and made a trade with one Jimmy Hart. Hart gaining the missing link, who doesn't, I don't even think, stay with the WWF much more, maybe a couple more months at most. And Adrian Adonis from Heenan's camp. They are traded in exchange for King Kong Bundy, and I believe that is the full extent of the trade, unless I'm forgetting somebody, but I don't think so. Bundy now in the Heenan family, and that sets up or begins to set up the desire for Bundy and Andre to have some matches around the horn, which they do, and also the subtle hints of Bundy being in line for Hogan by WrestleMania 2 start even here, if you want to read between the lines. Then we move to the director, Rupert, rips on the acting ability of Fuji and Morocco, which is a useless segment, so there's nothing more to say about it than it happened. Anyway, that closes the program. So if you've never seen the alignment of Bundy and Heenan, that might be fun to watch. If you've never seen the Morocco and Fuji acting skits beginning with Fuji General, that might be cringeworthy to watch. It's kind of one of those things you watch just to go, they did that, really? Are you kidding me? That's the point of it. But anyway, we'll be back with more of the TNT review series very, very soon. Like, subscribe, comment below, and keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.